Chapter 3. Chapter 3 Disclaimer. Alex, stop staring at the screen and just write something. Anything, Bob yelled as he shoved his desk against the office door and looked around, panicked. Looking up from her blank screen, Alex stared at her husband in bemusement. What are you doing now? Can't you hear them? He asked as he started shoving a bookcase against his desk. They're trying to break down the door. She cocked her head and listened closely. All she heard was Bob's panting and cursing, and the shriek of the bookcase as he slid it across the floor. Who's trying to break down the door? The readers. They want another chapter, and they're not going to wait any longer. Tell them what they need to know so the story will start. You know, I think this role reversal we have going on has finally caused you to lose what little sanity you had left, she told him as she stood up. Walking over to him, she pushed him toward his chair. Go, sit down. I'll take care of this. Moving the bookcase back where it belonged, she then began to push his desk away from the door. No, what are you doing? They'll get in and tear us apart, he babbled, waving his hands around. No, they won't, dear, she told him, puffing a bit as she slid the desk away from the door. Panicked, Bob spun away and blurted, We don't own Harry Potter. Start the damn story. Rolling her eyes, Alex gave the desk one more shove, then opened the door. Tilting her head slightly at what she saw, she then turned to Bob. How long has it been since you fed them? Fed who? The readers, he asked, staring at her blankly. No, them, she said, pointing at the doorway. Leaning out from his chair, he peeked around the corner and blinked. Crammed into the hall outside the door were 14 hungry, rather pissed-off llama. Bob looked at Alex nervously. But aren't they yours? Shaking her head sadly, she waded out into the hall, herding the llamas outside. We've switched roles, dear. You're the one with the pets now, remember? Oh, I hadn't thought of that. But hey, does that mean I get to play with your toys, too? He asked, trotting after her. Sure. If you want to die a slow, agonizing death, maybe I should go back to writing the disclaimers, he muttered. This seems very unfair to me. All the work and none of the toys? Series of the Granger residence. Moody and Hermione appeared next to a shed in the backyard of a tidy 2-story home. When mad, I let go of her arm. Hermione turned to face him. Thank you for bringing me home, sir. Moody shrugged, though he was busy inspecting the house and the surrounding area. Figured I had better get you out of there before the tears stopped and you had to poke yourself in the eye again. She grimaced. Was it that obvious? Dumbledore doesn't know what obvious is, Missy. If he did, he would understand what he's doing to Potter. Besides, I knew you weren't really angry with them. I was watching the 3 of you in the house. He tapped his cheek below his fake eye, then finally looking at her, his face split into a grin. That was a nice piece of acting, though. Thanks, she said, grinning impishly. The problem is I'll need to go back there soon and I've no way of doing so. If you're asking me for something, Missy, get on with it. I don't like having to guess, he growled. Standing a little taller, she took a deep breath. Would you make me a portkey back to the house? She asked in a rush. Shaking his head, he dug around in a pocket of his robe for a moment and removed a pipe. An unauthorized portkey is illegal. With a flick of his wrist, he wand appeared. Portus, he murmured, tapping the pipe. When the blue glow faded, he held it out to her. Tap it with your wand when you want to leave. Thank you, sir. Don't call me that, he snapped. The name's Moody, and don't lose that pipe. It's one of my favorites. I didn't know you smoked, she commented, sliding the pipe into the back pocket of her jeans. I don't. Opening her mouth to ask the obvious question, she quickly changed her mind. Looking at the house, she waved a hand toward it. So, is it safe? Of course it isn't, he glared at the house. You don't have any wards up. This house is wide open and everyone inside is vulnerable. I meant, is there anyone creeping about? She asked patiently. There's nothing I can do about the wards, what with underage magic being prohibited. There's no one about, he told her. Go inside. I'll erect a few wards. Warning anti-apparition, anti-apparition, anti-apparition. Thank you, sir. Moody, he looked down at her seriously. Your friend Potter has a hard fight ahead of him. You willing to set yourself against the old man to help Harry succeed? I am, she told him firmly. We have a plan. Merlin saved me from the machinations of teenagers, he grumbled. Noting her questioning look, he reached out and gave her a gentle push towards the house. Go on with you. Get inside. Thanks again, Moody. Hogwarts headmaster's office. Albus rubbed his temples tiredly as he gazed at the house elf in front of him. Dobby had brought him tea, and he had asked the creature to stay a moment. Dobby, fearing he had done something wrong, squirmed and fidgeted as he stood in front of the headmaster's desk, sighing. Dumbledore leaned forward and smiled gently, trying to put the elf at ease. Dobby, you're not in trouble. I have a favor to ask of you. A favor, headmaster, the elf asked, peering up at him nervously. Yes. I need your help with Harry Potter, Albus told him as he pushed his teacup aside. Noting the bright interest in Dobby's eyes, he nearly smiled. It was no secret the elf cared about Harry. You know Creature, correct? Dobby scowled. Creature is a bad elf, he muttered. He's not right in the head. All true, I'm afraid, Dumbledore said. The problem is, Harry has locked the Order out of headquarters and is there with Creature and Ron Weasley. I don't trust that combination. Many bad things could happen to Harry, and we'd never know about it until it was too late to help. Therefore, I want you to go to headquarters and keep an eye on things there. Watch Harry, Dobby. He's upset with me and won't allow me inside so we can talk about it. I don't want him to make any foolish mistakes in his anger. Dobby frowned at the headmaster. You want Dobby to spy on Harry Potter? No, not spy. I don't want you to hide from him. Just work for him. Take care of him. Make sure Creature doesn't harm him or manipulate him into doing something foolish. I will want you to keep me informed, however. I want to know what Harry and Ron are doing in that house. Dobby looked down, scowling fiercely at his feet. No matter what the headmaster called it, it sounded like spying to him. He didn't like it, but saying so might lead to him being dismissed. When he finally looked up at Dumbledore again, his eyes shone with eager understanding. I will go and protect Harry Potter, sir, he said firmly. Excellent. I knew I could count on you, Dumbledore exclaimed. Dobby spent several more minutes listening to the headmaster explain what he wanted, then left the office and gathered his belongings. No matter how things worked out, he knew he wouldn't be working at Hogwarts any longer. Closing his eyes, he reached out, concentrating on the one person he needed to find the most. Then, with a small pop, he disappeared. Grimmauld Place. Harry and Ron were still in the library several hours later. Ron, knowing Hermione had been serious, had asked to borrow Harry's textbook so he could start on his summer assignment. He didn't think his mother would be willing to send his things along, and hadn't thought that far ahead when he had made his decision to stay. The problem of school books was easily solved since Harry had his clothing, however, might be a problem. Harry had said they could send Creature to the burrow, but Ron wasn't sure if he should push his mother's temper that far. It was no secret she loathed the evil elf, but then who didn't really? Ron had finished his charms essay and was working on transfiguration. Harry was reading one of the books Moody had brought him. When Ron leaned back to massage his hand, he glanced around and almost snickered. If Hermione had been there, she would have goggled at them. It was a rare sight to see both him and Harry working quietly on anything that resembled learning, but she was right in one thing. It was time to grow up. Sighing, Ron picked up his quill and went back to work. The small pop that sounded in the room a few minutes later had both young men looking up. Ron, not seeing anything, started to shrug, but Harry stood up. Dobby? He asked, puzzled. What are you doing here? Turning, Ron saw Dobby standing a few feet behind him. Once he'd spotted Harry, he dropped the small bag he was carrying and hurried over. Oh, Harry Potter, sir, I'm happy to see you, the elf exclaimed as he wrapped his arms around Harry's leg and gazed up at him. Dobby, Harry said as he reached down to unwind Dobby's arms from around his leg. Crouching down to put himself at eye level, he frowned. It's nice to see you two. But what are you doing here? Dobby drew himself up angrily. The headmaster told me to come here and spy on Harry Potter, but Dobby won't do it. Dobby has left Hogwarts. He won't, Ron asked. Spy on Harry. What's going on? Dobby explained what had happened in the headmaster's office, growing more angry and agitated by the minute. He ended his tale with a strident, "So I quit. I won't be spying on Harry Potter or his friends for anyone. Dobby is a good elf and will protect Harry Potter." Harry stood up so fast that Dobby jumped back with a frightened squeak. Turning to Ron, his green eyes blazing with anger, he spat. "That bastard! That's nothing new," Ron said calmly. "We're lucky it was Dobby he asked, though." "You!" Creature scurried into the room quickly, heading straight for Dobby. "You will not be hurting my nasty master with the filthy, muggle-loving ways of the hairy headmaster." the old house elf exclaimed. Reaching out, his hands wrapped around Dobby's throat and both elves disappeared with a loud crack. Harry froze for a moment, shocked. "What the hell?" Ron yelped, shoving back his chair and standing up. "I don't know," Harry said, a bit dazed, "but I intend to find out. Creature, get back here, now!" The old elf appeared before them, a self-satisfied smirk on his ugly face. "Nasty Master doesn't have to worry about the freakish elf any longer. Creature doesn't have to worry about the freakish elf any longer. Creature took care of him," Harry growled. "Creature stuffed him in the refrigerator and cast an anti-apparition ward around it. The traitorous elf should be dead soon." When Ron and Harry bolted from the room, Creature scowled. "If you'd wanted to watch him die," he called after them, "all you had to do was ask." Hearing the humans running down the stairs, Creature started after them, mumbling to himself. Reaching the kitchen several moments later, the old elf blinked in surprise. There, on the floor, with his back against the door of the now rocking refrigerator, was his new master. His green eyes were wide with shock or fear, the elf couldn't tell which, and his wand was grasped firmly in his right hand. Across the room from him, leaning against the far wall, was the redhead. His eyes were as wide as Harry's, and his arms were full of trembling, weeping house elf. "It tried to eat me!" Dobby cried. "It tried to eat me, and I couldn't get out!" "Everything needs to eat," Creature commented to no one in particular. Dobby's head came up, and he launched himself at Creature so quickly Ron could do nothing to prevent it. Within moments, both elves were on the ground, rolling around, punching, kicking, and biting at each other. The grunts of pain and howls of anger rang out in the kitchen and caused the refrigerator to rock and bounce more vigorously, as if the creature inside could sense that bloodshed was imminent. "Harry," Ron called over the noise the elves were making, "you might want to move away from that thing." He watched the bouncing appliance warily. Harry pushed himself to his feet, spun around, and kicked the refrigerator. "Knock it off, or I'll cut you up and give you to Snake for potion ingredients." The appliance stopped moving so abruptly that both young men blinked in surprise. "That was easy," Harry muttered, turning away. Before he could take a step, however, the refrigerator door swung open, smacking him in the back hard enough to send him stumbling. Before Harry could turn around to face the thing, Ron had his wand out and the door shut and locked tight. "Great! A carnivorous creature with a twisted sense of humor," Harry muttered. "Let's deal with that later," Ron said, still eyeing the refrigerator. "Right now, you might want to take care of the elves before they beat each other to a pulp." "What?" Harry looked around and spotted the ruckus. "Oh, I so don't need this." Wading into the fray, he ordered both elves to stand down. When Creature and Dobby separated, they continued to shout threats and obscenities at each other until Harry bellowed for quiet. "Dobby, go to the library and wait for me," Harry said, pointing at the kitchen door. "Yes, Harry Potter, sir," the elf squeaked as he scurried from the room. "Creature," Harry said, turning to the old elf, "Dobby is not to be harmed. I understand why you did what you did, but Dobby has left Hogwarts because Dumbledore wanted him to spy on us, and Dobby wouldn't do it." Creature blinked in surprise. "Dobby wouldn't spy on Creature for the headmaster?" Harry, figuring a white lie wasn't going to harm anything, nodded. "That's right. He wouldn't spy on you, Ron or myself. Not for anyone. He came here to tell me what Dumbledore wanted him to do, not to cause us any harm." Creature scowled and looked down for a moment. "I understand, but I still don't like that elf. He's not right in the head." Yanking on one ear rather firmly, he looked back up at Harry. Would Nasty Master allow Creature to seal the house to keep other elves away? "The evil little bastards can be sneaky." "That's a good idea," Harry agreed. "The only house elves allowed in are you and Dobby." Sighing, Creature, nodding in understanding, muttered something under his breath, then clapped his hands. The house shook slightly. "It is done," the old elf said quietly. "Thank you, Creature. Ron and I will go back to the library." "Would Nasty Master and his blood traitor friend like tea?" Creature asked. Two humans and one elf all blinked in surprise at the offer. Creature looked down at his feet and frowned. Why did he keep offering to serve the master? He didn't really like him, did he? No tea. But butterbeer would be nice, Harry said quietly. Creature will bring it to you shortly. Harry turned, waving Ron toward the kitchen door. Thanks. Oh, and Creature, if you call Ron names again, I'll send you to work in the home of a muggle-born Hufflepuff. Do you understand me? Kreacher sighed again, knowing Harry was twisted enough to do just what he threatened. I understand, but you're taking all the fun out of this, he grumbled. Harry nearly laughed. Instead, he stared at the elf for a moment, then let the small, twisted, evil smile play over his lip. Don't worry, Kreacher. There are still plenty of people I plan on paying back for what they've done to me. Follow my orders and I'll let you play too. Kreacher's eyes lit up. Nasty Master would do this for Kreacher. When Harry nodded, the elf let out a whoop of happiness and danced towards the pantry and the butterbeer inside. Shaking his head, Harry exited the kitchen. When he entered the library a few moments later, he was surprised to see Ron speaking gently to Dobby, trying to calm the elf. Seeing Harry, Dobby squeaked. "It is not mad, Dobby," Ron soothed, then looked at his friend questioningly. "Ron's right," Harry said as he sat down at the table and sighed. "I'm not angry with you, Dobby, but I can't have you and Kreacher fighting." When Dobby opened his mouth, Harry held up a hand. "Enough! I've already spoken to Kreacher about it, and he'll not hurt you. You'll make the same promise, or you can't be here." Dobby blinked. "I promise not to hurt Kreacher unless he tries to hurt me." "Good enough," Harry muttered. "So you're not going back to work at Hogwarts?" The elf scowled. "No, Dobby won't work there." Harry looked at Ron, who shrugged. Rubbing his face tiredly, he squashed the urge to grumble and instead offered Dobby a job with him. The cry of happiness wasn't surprising, but the impact of the small body against his knees jarred him slightly. Looking down with some amusement, he met the shining eyes of the elf and listened as Dobby pledged to serve and protect him always. As the elf paused for a breath, Ron sat down across from Harry and grinned. "Hermione's going to throw a fit." "No, she won't," Harry disagreed. "Harry Potter is right. Dobby is being paid, so the dark seamstress will be happy," Dobby added. Ron and Harry stared at the elf. "Dark seamstress?" Ron finally asked, his voice hoarse. "Oh, God, that's perfect," Harry said, trying to choke back his laughter. Ron slid into his chair and stared at Harry. "She'll kill him if she hears that name," he muttered, before beginning to laugh. Getting control of himself, Harry looked at Dobby. "You can't call Hermione that, Dobby. It would hurt her feelings. Oh, and call me Harry." As the elf went into her eye, another spasm of joyful babbling, Harry closed his eyes tiredly. Then, thinking about the problem of Ron's things being at the Burrow, he grinned. "Dobby, I need you to do something for Ron. He left all his things at the Burrow, and he needs them. Can you get them for him and bring them back here without being seen by the Weasleys?" Letting go of Harry's legs and dancing back a few steps, Dobby nodded eagerly. "I can do that. I'll be back soon." Then, with a small pop, he was gone. "Well, I didn't mean now," Harry muttered, frowning slightly. "It's better this way," Ron said quietly. When Harry turned toward him, he saw Ron looking at the doorway and Kreacher, who was entering with a tray, upon which were 8 bottles of cold butterbeer and a tin of mixed biscuits. The elf placed the tray on the table and asked if they'd need anything else. Harry explained that Dobby was working for him now, but that Kreacher was responsible for the house and everything that went on within it. Mollified somewhat, the elf accepted the news with something approaching grace, and after receiving permission, withdrew from the library. Ron looked at Harry and shook his head. "I hope Hermione's having an easier time of it than you are," he said quietly as he reached for a bottle on the tray. Granger residence? She wasn't, of course. After all, she'd dumped 5 years' worth of bigotry, danger, bloodshed, and finally war on her unsuspecting parents, and hoped for the best. There wasn't any way to really prepare them for what she had to say, so she simply laid out the facts and waited for the resulting explosion. She didn't have to wait long. Her mother gasped loudly, and her father went nuclear, as her father paced the kitchen and laid down the law. Hermione sighed to herself and wound a piece of hair around her finger, calmly, waiting for him to run out of steam. "Do you understand me, young lady?" John Granger finally growled, leaning over her and looking fierce. Hermione loved him dearly, but he did tend to be a bit over-dramatic. "I understand, Dad. Now, let me tell you why it won't work," she told him. When he growled at her, she let a bit of her own temper show. "Oh, stop hovering and sit down," she snapped. Diane Granger's lips twitched slightly. "The two were more alike than they realized. Do sit down, John. You're starting to give me a headache." John yelled. "Sit!" Hermione barked, and was just as surprised as her parents when her father's ass hit the seat of the chair with gratifying speed. Sighing, Hermione leaned forward. "Now, Pulling me out of Hogwarts will only cause the two of you more trouble than you realize. Enrolling me in public school is going to start a chain of events neither of you will like. After all, there is no record of me going to any school in Britain for the last 5 years. Do you really want to explain to the authorities why you've kept me out of school all this time? We'll tell them about Hogwarts, her father said, scowling at her. That's a crime. Remember what Professor McGonagall told you about the magical world and the secrecy laws. You two are subject to those laws because of me. If you tell anyone about Hogwarts, you'll be brought before the magical courts to answer for it. They won't go easy on you. As a matter of fact, with the Dark Lord's return and his servants being employed in the ministry, you can bet they'll be harsher on you, as parents of a Muggle born and a friend of Harry Potter's, than they would on anyone else. We could always leave the country, Diane mused. Yeah, right, we'll move to Canada, John blurted out. You can, if you like. I won't run away from this. Harry and Ron need me, and I'll not turn my back on them now. Besides, the Dark Lord has contacts everywhere. You'd have to change your names, your profession, even your looks, to stand any chance of going unnoticed. We can do that, and you'll come with us. You're still underage, my girl, John growled. True. But you'll have the same problems in Canada that you would here. I have no school records, and mentioning Hogwarts will get you arrested in Canada by the magical police as quickly as it would here. They'll deport you, and Hermione was bluffing for all she was worth. While she wasn't sure of her facts on international magical law, she knew her parents were completely clueless on the subject. John's angry expression crumbled, and he looked at Hermione, his fear for her play. I don't like you being in danger. Maybe you shouldn't be friends with Harry anymore. Hermione reached out and took his hand gently. Dad, I was in danger the moment I cast my first spell. Even if I wasn't a friend of Harry's, the fact that I'm a Muggle-born and smart means I'm a target. I represent everything the Dark Lord hates. Even if I withdrew from Hogwarts and didn't talk to Harry again, I'd still be in danger. But even if I wasn't, I won't run from this fight or leave Ron and Harry to fight it alone. Diane watched them both fondly. She was terrified for her daughter, but proud of the young woman she'd become. John, you can't ask her to turn her back on this, she said quietly. The hell I can't, he exclaimed. You're the one who taught her to stand up for what's right and to fight for those things worth having. Is her life and her place in the magical world not reason enough for you? Diane asked quietly. John looked between the two most important people in his life and growled. Pushing away from the table, he stood up. I need to think about this. He stalked out of the kitchen, muttering to himself. Sighing, Hermione turned to her mother and waited. The lengthy silence that followed did nothing for her nerves. I don't like it, Diane finally said. I don't like that you're tangled up in any of this or that. You're in danger. In the middle of a war at 16. Lord Hermione, what are these people thinking? I can't explain it to you, Mum, because I don't understand most of it myself. I've never been able to understand bigotry and hate like this. It defies all logic and reason, but I won't run from it. How could I go back to the magical world when the fighting is over and look anyone in the eyes? Why did you have to go back? Because I'm a witch, Hermione said, simple. That's not all that I am, but I won't deny a part of myself I happen to like very much, just for the chance of going unnoticed by the Dark Lord and his thugs. Diane stared at her for a long moment, then nodded her head. I'm proud of you, Hermione, she said quietly. I'm terrified of what you'll see and what you might have to do to protect yourself. I'm afraid you'll be hurt or worse, but I'm proud of you for doing what you feel you must and for standing up for what's right. Standing, Hermione walked to her mother's chair and sank to her knee. Wrapping her arms around her mother's waist, she held on tightly. Thank you, Mum. I won't pretend I'm not scared. I'd be a fool not to be. But this is something I have to do. John, standing in the kitchen doorway for the last several minutes, looked into his wife's eyes. When she nodded at him, he sighed quietly. All right, Hermione. You win. Tell us what we can do to make things easier for you. Hermione's head came up and she gazed tearfully at her father. How much did you hear? She asked as she released her mother and stood up. He shrugged. Most of it. And like your mother, I'm proud of you. Terrified, but proud. Hermione hurled herself into her father's waiting arms and sobbed against his chest. Thank you, Daddy. John's arms tightened around his daughter. Closing his eyes, he sent out a silent prayer to God, asking him to keep his precious child safe in the days to come. Then, pulling away, he wiped the tears from her cheeks and smiled softly. "None of that now, my girl. Sit down. We have a few things yet to discuss. Morning, Grimmauld Place." Hermione finished unpacking her belongings from her trunk and sighed. She'd chosen the same room she'd shared with Ginny in the past, mostly out of familiarity. She'd brought a few things with her via portkey, but the bulk had come by way of Dobby. The elf had gone back to her house and retrieved her trunk. She wouldn't be going home again for the summer, though her parents had said they'd meet her at the station on the 1st of September to see her off. She would miss them, but she needed to be with Harry and Ron. Thankfully, they'd understood. Leaving the bedroom, she went downstairs to find the boys. Expecting them to be in the kitchen, she was startled when she heard voices coming from the back of the house. Changing directions, she paused in the doorway of the library and blinked, unsure of what she was seeing. Harry was hunched over the table, reading a book. Ron sat across from him, writing quickly and muttering to himself. Next to him was an open Transfiguration book. "After taking our owls, you'd think they'd give us a summer with no homework," the redhead muttered quietly. "Keep dreaming," Harry replied as he turned the page. "They want to make sure we don't forget everything." Too late, Harry flashed him a quick grin, then spotted Hermione. "Unpacked already. That was fast." Ron looked up and smiled his greeting. "It goes much faster when you can use magic," Hermione said. She walked towards the table. "Homework?" she asked them both. "For me, yeah?" Ron said, turning back to his essay. Harry's finished his, when Hermione raised an eyebrow. Harry shrugged. "I was bored at the Dursleys. I finished most of it there. I only had Transfiguration and Potions left and did those the first few days here." "Really? Let's see it then," she said. "Scary. You're starting to sound like you did in first year," Ron told her, then ducked when she took a playful swat at him. Harry pointed to a stack of books at the end of the table. "It's all over there. Miss Granger, please don't grade me too harshly." "Prat," she muttered as she walked over to the pile. "I'm only trying to help." Ron and Harry both chorused. They looked at each other for a moment, then laughed. Hermione sniffed and turned away. She sat down and pulled the first book toward her. Opening it, she found Harry's Charms essay and began to read. Half an hour later, Harry put his book aside and stretched. "Well, that's the last of the books Moody gave me to read. You two might want to go through them later." Great Ron grumbled. "More homework." He'd finished with Transfiguration and was now working on Potions. "Yeah, but this is more interesting than anything the Hogwarts professors ever assigned us," Harry told him. "Homework is homework," Mate Ron said. "And speaking of, do you think I could take a peek at your Potions essay?" "You could, yes, but you won't understand it," Harry said, smirking. "Why is that?" "Because it's not written in English." Hermione looked up. "What do you mean?" "Just what I said," Harry shrugged. "I won't be taking Potions this year, I hope, but Snape insisted I complete the assignment. When I complained to Dumbledore about it, he told me Snape was right, and that I had to do the homework. Or what? It's not like they can fail you," Ron protested. "They have no say in owl results." "He's right," Hermione said. "Why bother doing it at all?" When both boys gaped at her, she scowled. "What? I'm all for homework, but this is just a waste of time. If you're not going to take Potions, why do the assignment?" As Ron pointed out, the Ministry will give you your grade this year. Harry grinned. "That's why I wrote it the way I did. Snape won't be able to read why mixing belladonna and chocolate pudding is a bad idea. It's written in Parseltongue." Ron laughed. "Brilliant! Just one question. What happens if you mix belladonna and chocolate pudding?" "Nuff. Honestly, Ron, that's not true," Harry said. "If you mix in enough belladonna, you get a poisonous pudding." Hermione rolled her eyes and went back to reading Harry's assignments. "That's just wrong," Ron muttered. "What a waste of chocolate." With a sigh, he dragged his potion book over and opened it. "Maybe I should think about not doing the homework. It's not like I'll be taking Potions this year. That's up to you," Harry said. Ron looked at him for a moment, then glanced at Hermione. "Don't look at me," she said. "It's your homework to do or not. I won't say anything either way." The redhead began to flip through the book until he found the section he needed to complete his essay. "Might as well do it. Then I can walk away from that bloody class without feeling as though I left something unfinished." Harry and Hermione exchanged a look. The trip to the Department of Mysteries really had changed Ron. Still immature about something, he seemed more level-headed now. That he would willingly finish an assignment that even Hermione thought unnecessary said a lot about how much he had grown up. "No comments on my essays?" Harry asked. "They're fine the way they are." Hermione said absently. If Ron can do his potion essay, I can refrain from nitpicking your writing. Besides, some of your work is really good. He laughed. That should tell you how bored I was until you two arrived. Most of the work was interesting. You've lost it, mate, Ron said dryly. Homework interesting. Next you'll tell us that Umbridge was a great teacher and Snape is just misunderstood. Git, Harry said, scowling. Prat, Ron replied before bending slightly to begin writing his essay. Boys, Hermione muttered. Moody arrived later that morning. He explained that he'd arranged for tutors for Harry. Seeing Hermione and Ron, he shrugged and told them that it might be a good idea for them to join Harry. As they insisted on fighting alongside their friend, they might as well learn how to go about it properly. How do we work this, Moody? With the Fidelius in place, they won't be able to find the house. Portkey, maybe, Hermione asked. That's a risk, Ron commented. They'll have to come often, so time portkeys would be best. But if they were lost or stolen, anyone could show up. Moody nodded approvingly. True, but the wards would just kick them back out again. At least I think they would, Harry said. A bit unsure. That's why we'll be going about this a bit differently. Your tutors won't be coming here. You'll be using a portkey to travel to them. Assuming you all agree to this, Moody told them. You want Harry to leave headquarters. He'd be out in the open then, Hermione protested. Do you think I'd expose him to danger, Missy? Moody growled. I've taken care of security. The location is under a Fidelius. It's warded and guarded heavily. The three friends looked at each other, unsure. I don't want to rush your decision, Potter, but we do have a bit of a time problem, Moody told him seriously. I've called in a lot of favors for this. If you don't want training, tell me now so everyone can go home. Remember, some of them are giving up their vacations to help you. Great, Harry said, sinking into a chair and holding his head. Just what I needed. More guilt. Get over it, Moody barked. You're important. Training you is important. These people know that. Harry looked at Ron and Hermione. What do you think? I don't know, Ron said honestly. What would we be learning, sir? He asked. Look at Mad Eye. Basic warding, advanced charms, occupancy, defense, and how to fight, the Exora told them. You mean dueling? Harry asked. Of course not, Potter, Moody snapped. Dueling is for show. I'm talking about back-alley fighting, dirty tricks and spells aimed specifically to kill or maim your opponent. What? Hermione cried. Is that necessary? Ron asked. Harry's eyes narrowed. Maiming and killing, you say? Ron and Hermione stared at him in astonishment. How many Death Eaters did we stun in the Department of Mysteries? Harry asked his friends. And how many of them got back up and fought on? Had we aimed to maim or kill, Sirius might still be alive. Do you think someone like Lucius Malfoy will decide not to kill you because of your excellent jelly legs, Jinx? Or because your tickling hex was spot on? Moody nodded, then turned to Ron and Hermione. Well, the two looked at each other, then agreed reluctantly. A dead opponent is best, Moody went on. But it's not always possible to get in a killing shot. If you can't, take his arms off. You can't cast if you can't hold a wand. If you can't hit his arms, take his legs. You can run then and won't have to worry about him chasing you. Kill if you can. Maim if you can't. That's disgusting, Hermione protested. That's war, little girl. Learn to accept it now, or go find yourself a hole to hide in until this is over, Moody barked. This is something you'll both have to decide for yourselves, Harry told them quietly. I've talked to Mad Eye about this before. I don't plan on starting any fights. Not yet, anyway. But I will finish them if I can. I'm tired of facing the same Death Eaters time and again. If they come for me, I'll do my best to make sure they can't fight in awe. To do that, I need more training than Hogwarts can provide. Moody offered to help, and I'm going to take it. What the two of you do is your business. Well said, Potter, Moody complimented. I heard you wanted to be an Auror, Weasley. The training you'll be undergoing will give you a leg up on the competition at the Academy. And you, Granger, you'll always be a target. Once Voldemort's dead, there will still be pure-blood bigots out there who will resent you, and not just because you're Potter's friend, but because you're an intelligent mudblood. When Harry growled, Moody held up one hand and started at Hermione. What's it going to be, Missy? Hermione's shoulders slumped. I don't really see that I have much choice. I won't hide while Harry and Ron risk their lives. Weasley, Moody asked. "I'm in," he said quietly. He was pale and a bit shaken, but he'd vowed to himself he'd help Harry if he could. If that meant killing Death Eaters, he'd do so, whether he liked the idea or not. Harry looked between the two. "You don't have to do this," he told them. "Yeah, we do, mate," Ron said. "He's right, Harry. You may be Voldemort's main target, but Ron and I are in the crosshairs too. And not just because we're your friends." She rubbed her face tiredly. "Mr. Moody is right. I'll always be a target for bigots, though if he calls me a mudblood again, I'm going to turn that magical eye of his into an olive." She glared at the old aura. "Fair enough, Missy. And don't be calling me mister. I've already explained why my family's in danger," Ron said. "Muggle-loving blood traitors and all that." "Oh, Ron," Hermione began softly. He waved her off irritably. "It doesn't matter, Hermione. Trust me, my family's used to it. We've never believed in the garbage the Dark Lord and his followers spout about blood purity. We know Harry is the only one who can kill Voldemort, but that doesn't mean we can't help level the playing field by taking out as many Death Eaters as we can." "I know," Hermione said. "I'm just having trouble wrapping my mind around killing people. I know it's war, but I don't think I understood what that meant until now. If we don't, who will?" Harry asked. "Not Dumbledore or the Order. The Ministry won't either." Ron shook his head. "The Aurors will arrest Death Eaters, and the Minister will line his pockets with galleons and release them in weeks, and we'll have to fight them again," Hermione finished. Moody looked at the three friends. "Have you decided, then?" Ron shrugged. "Looks like we're going." "Yeah, it does," Hermione said, sitting up straight. "When do we leave, and how are we traveling?" Harry asked. "We'll leave the day after tomorrow and travel by portkey to our location." Moody scratched his chin. "Bring along enough clothing for 10 days and make sure everything is lightweight, though you might want to bring a heavy robe or jacket just in case." "We'll be gone for 10 days, Harry asked. "I didn't say that." "So how long will we be gone?" Ron asked. "Just be packed and ready to go," Moody told them. Turning away, he limped out of the room, muttering to himself. "Couldn't he have given us a straight answer?" Ron grumbled. "He could have, but I think he enjoys doing it this way," Harry told her. "What about the elves, Harry?" "You can't leave them here together," Hermione said. "You told me they've already had one fight. They stay away from each other now. I'm not worried about it." The rest of the day was spent studying. Harry read some of the books from the library, while Hermione started in on the books Moody had brought. Ron worked on his summer assignments. The next morning, Moody's owl arrived, delivering their test results from the Ministry. Hermione squealed happily when she read her results. Both Ron and Harry were a bit surprised, however. Both had done better than they expected. "Great! I passed potions," Harry muttered. "Yeah, me too. But at least we can drop the class this year," Ron replied. Another owl arrived after lunch, carrying letters from Hogwarts about course selections for the coming year. Harry scowled down at the bird, not trusting anything from Hogwarts. "You thinking portkey?" Ron asked. "Wouldn't put it past the headmaster, mate," Harry told him. When he pulled out his wand, the owl became agitated and began to screech loudly. "Wait, Harry," Hermione said, placing her hand over his. "There's no need to upset it. Why not ask Dobby to remove the letters?" "Good idea, Dobby." The elf appeared and looked up with bright eyes. "You called Dobby Harry Potter, sir." "Just Harry, Dobby. And yeah, I called you. Would you please remove the letters the owl is carrying?" "They're from Hogwarts, and I don't trust Dumbledore. He may have tampered with them." Dobby scowled darkly. "I will check Harry Potter, sir." He approached the table the owl had landed on and reached for the letters. The bird glared at him, but allowed the elf to take them. Once relieved of its burden, it ruffled its feathers, then launched itself into the air and out the open window. Dobby placed the letters on the table and held his hands over them. A look of concentration crossed his face, and his small hands glowed brightly. One letter glowed an ominous red. "It's a portkey, Harry Potter, sir. It won't activate unless you touch it. We'll have to neutralize it first," Ron said, obviously. The glow surrounding Dobby's hands turned blue. A moment later, a loud snap was heard, and the red aura around the letter winked out. "It is done, Mr. Weasley, sir. Call me Ron," the redhead said absently. "You know, Dumbledore's going to be disappointed when you don't arrive." Hermione grinned. "Isn't that a shame? I should find some way of apologizing for my rudeness," Harry said, smiling rather wickedly. Creature popped in and looked up at Harry. "Send Creature to Hogwarts, nasty master. Creature will shave the hairy headmaster and knit you a jumper." Ron's eyes went unfocused. Brilliant. A bald headmaster. Utterly brilliant. What a wonderful idea, Harry added, looking at Creature approvingly. Creature, Hermione said, catching the elf's attention. Is there some way you could make sure the hair can't be grown back via magical means? The elf's eyes lit with malicious glee. He looked at Hermione carefully for a moment, then smiled slyly. You were like Nasty Master. Not as nice as people think. She has her moments, Harry agreed, while Ron laughed quietly. When do you want to do this, Harry? He tilted his head slightly in thought. Tonight, he said firmly. He looked down at Creature. You'll go straight to Hogwarts, nowhere else, and wait until the headmaster is alone. Can you do this without the headmaster knowing who did it? I will stun him first. He won't see me. Very well. Shave it all off then. When you're done, come straight back here. You are to talk to no one outside this house, nor be seen by anyone outside this house. Do you understand? Harry asked, his green-eyed gaze boring into the eyes of the elf. Yes, Nasty Master, the elf said, a bit disgruntled. Oh, and don't knit me a jumper. It's a nice idea, but I have something else in mind. Just bring me all the hair you shave off. Creature cocked his head and wondered what the master had planned. I will do as you say. Excellent. Oh, one other thing before you go, Creature. The three of us will be leaving tomorrow. You will be in charge of the house while I'm gone. No one is to be allowed in other than Ron, Hermione, Dobby, or myself. Moody too, I suppose, though he'll be with us. I will take care of everything. Nasty Master doesn't need to worry. No one will get past Creature, the elf stated firmly. Harry Potter is leaving, Dobby asked, his eyes wide. Dobby nodded, his eyes sad, then popped away. All right, Creature, off with you. Remember what I said. Straight to Hogwarts, then straight back here. You're not to be seen by anyone, nor speak to anyone. Creature understands, the elf stated. After a brief, almost bow, the elf was gone. This should be interesting, Hermione said, a smile tugging at her mouth. Interesting? Are you kidding? I wish I could see his face when he wakes up and realizes what's happened, Ron exclaimed. Too bad we can't tell the twins. They could probably get pictures. Let's not complicate things, Harry said. Pictures would be great, but he'll still be bald, or mostly so, by the time the term starts. True. I guess that will have to do, Ron said, a little disappointed. So, why did you tell Creature to bring you Dumbledore's hair? Hermione asked. Well, I'm not remotely interested in a Dumbledore hair jumper, Harry said, shuddering slightly at the thought. Besides, it might just come in handy later. Handy? For what? Ron asked. Hermione's eyes narrowed. I haven't brewed polyjuice since second year, so I know you're not thinking of asking me to fire up my cauldron. Of course not, Harry said, looking highly offended. There are plenty of cauldrons downstairs. Harry, Hermione exclaimed. Polyjuice? Ron asked. A grin spread across his face as he realized the implications. I'm not saying we'll use it, Harry said calmly, staring at Hermione. But it might come in handy. And if I refuse to brew it, she asked. Ron and Harry exchanged a look, then turned to face her. Their eyes were wide and pleading, and they were pouting. Please, they both begged. Oh, stop it! Oh, stop it! That hasn't worked since fourth year, she said, shaking her head. Well, I suppose I could try brewing it then, Ron said, looking at Harry. Couldn't hurt, Harry agreed. Hermione choked. Couldn't hurt? Are you insane? Do you want to end up in the infirmary? Or St. Mungo's? If I remember correctly, you were the one who ended up in the infirmary last time, Harry said. Ron nodded sagely. She did, yes. Hermione's jaw tightened. Fine, she muttered through clenched teeth. I'll brew your bloody potion for you, Hermione, Ron exclaimed. Language! Harry laughed. Oh, that was perfect, Ron! Hermione whipped out her wand and silenced him. Brain jackass, she muttered. Don't think I'm going to let you do something like this again, Potter. Ron shook his head. A few days with us, and she's cursing worse than an aurora on leave. Harry, still silenced, slid into a chair, obviously still laughing. Grumbling quietly to herself, Hermione snatched her Hogwarts letter from the table, sat down and tore it open. Harry drew his wand and removed Hermione's charm as Ron reached for his own letter. As much as I don't want to take potions, I think I have to, the redhead said grumpily. It's required to be an auror. Harry frowned as he opened his letter. I hadn't thought of that. You going to take it? Ron asked. Not unless Dumbledore's fired Snape. Not a chance, mate, Harry shrugged. So I'll take my potion newt later. I can hire a tutor after graduation. If you weren't so stubborn about it, I'd be willing to pay for you, too. Ron sighed. Thanks for the offer, but I'll stick with Snape. If you change your mind, just let me know. Half an hour later, they'd each chosen their classes for the coming year. They shared some subjects, such as charms, transfiguration, and defense. Harry and Ron both dropped divination, and all three dropped care of magical creatures. Hagrid would be disappointed, but the class wouldn't help them in the coming fight. Ron and Hermione were both taking potions, and Harry chose an elective called Basic Healing. Hermione stayed with ancient runes, explaining that they might be useful in the war. I still need one more subject, Harry said. Any ideas? I need another too, Ron replied as he examined the list of offered classes. Maybe Muggle Studies. That would make my dad happy. Harry and I can help you in that class, Hermione told him. Right then. Muggle Studies it is. He wrote it down, folded the parchment, and sat back. They're offering something called Household Magic. Any idea what that is? Harry asked. Spells for cleaning, cooking, laundry. It's a basic class to teach Muggle-borns and half-bloods how to use magic to do everyday things, Ron explained. They won't teach you anything you can't learn yourself by reading a few books, Hermione said with a sniff of disdain. So, an easy class then? Harry asked. Dead easy, mate, Ron agreed. Harry added it to his list of classes and shrugged off Hermione's glare. Muggle Studies would be a waste, he told her as he folded the parchment. Care of magical creatures won't help. Divination is rubbish, and it's too late to start ancient runes. I know. If only Snape wasn't teaching potions, she grumbled. He wouldn't be if Dumbledore wasn't headmaster, Harry said as he stood up. Give me your lists and I'll take them up to Hedwig. She'll be happy to have something to do. When evening came, the trio packed 10 days' worth of light clothing, as well as the usual personal items. Hermione, of course, included several books. They decided to use backpacks, though they were enlarged so everything would fit. A quick charm to lighten each pack solved the weight issue. Creature arrived after dinner, hauling a large linen bag that resembled an overstuffed pillow. No one saw me, the elf said as he dropped his bundle on the floor at Harry's feet. The no longer hairy headmaster never knew what hit him. The elf's grin was almost feral. There's not a single hair left on his body, and it won't grow back naturally, or with magic, Ron grinned. It won't grow back. That's brilliant. Then his jaw dropped. Wait! Not a single hair left on his. He shuddered. Oh, I don't want to know. I'm sure he doesn't mean everywhere, Ron, Hermione tried to assure him. I said what I mean, Creature told her. The hair on his toes was tough, but not nearly as tough as the hair between his— No! Hermione shouted as she slapped her hands over her ears. I don't want to hear this! She began to hum loudly to herself as Creature continued to inform Ron and Harry about the difficulties he encountered while removing hair from various places. Harry held his head in his hands, unsure if he wanted to laugh or sick up. Thank you, Creature. You did a fine job, he choked out. The elf shrugged. I enjoyed it. Thank you for letting Creature play. He blinked, then scowled when he realized that he was actually grateful to Harry. If Nasty Master has no more need of me, I'll go rest. The plucking charm takes a great deal of concentration, and I'm rather tired. Plucking charm? Harry asked. I thought you were going to shave him, Ron said. Pluck shave? What does it matter? He's bald now. Besides, plucking hurts more. Creature's eyes glowed at the thought. Oh, right. You may go, and thanks, Creature, Harry said. Nodding, the elf vanished. Plucking? Hermione asked, her eyes dancing. Plucking, Ron confirmed. They looked at each other. A moment later, laughter bounced off the walls as the three friends pictured Dumbledore's reaction. After breakfast the next morning, Harry pulled Creature and Dobby aside for last-minute instructions. He wasn't sure when Moody would arrive, but he didn't want to keep the man waiting if he could help it. Creature assured him that he would take care of the house and contact Harry if anything happened. When he was gone, Harry turned to Dobby. I'm not sure where we're going or what's going to happen, so I need to ask you for a favor, he told Dobby. Dobby bounced a few times. I will do anything Harry Potter asks. Wait until you hear what I'm asking for. You have the right to refuse, Harry told him, serious. I know elves have their own magic. You protected me against Lucius Malfoy in second year, after all. Noting Dobby's scowl at the mention of his former master, he hurried on. I'd like you to follow us, Dobby. As I said, I'm not sure where we're going, I trust Moody. Well, mostly, but he's being a bit mysterious, and that makes me nervous. Dobby nodded. I will follow. No one will harm Harry Potter or his friends. Not if Dobby can help it. Harry relaxed. Thanks, Dobby. It's probably not necessary, but I feel better knowing you'll be with us. The elf smiled. It's better to be cautious than to walk into a trap, he said. Harry bit his lip. Such wisdom from the sometimes foolish house elf surprised him. Moody arrived mid-morning to find the teens in the library. Everyone packed and ready? He asked. Yes, sir, Hermione said. Don't call me that, missy, he growled as he walked toward her. Now, listen up. I'm going to pull out my wand and scan each of you. Potter, stop glaring at me. If I'd wanted to harm you, I could have done so well before now. You all know the Ministry has monitoring charms on your wands. They need to be removed or you won't be able to use them outside of this house. I can replace them once we get back and the Ministry won't know a thing about it. Reluctantly, Harry nodded and drew his wand. Ron and Hermione already had theirs out. When I'm done, I'll be scanning each of you. I want to make sure there are no tracking charms on you. Potter, I know for a fact you have at least two. One tracks your location. The other tracks your health. Dumbledore, Harry asked. Right in one. Now, let's start with your wands. Moody pulled his wand out slowly and deliberately. He wasn't sure what sort of warding creature had put in place to protect Harry, but he wasn't taking any chances. He had no intentions of harming the boy, but he didn't trust the elf. Extra hope, he said, and flicked his wand in a quick motion. Hermione's wand shone a bright white for a moment, then a snapping sound rang through the room and light around her wand disappeared. He repeated the process for both Ron and Harry. You can use your wands outside the house now. I'll put them back on before you go to Hogwarts. No sense asking for trouble if we can avoid it, Moody told them. Raising his wand again, he pointed it at Hermione. Hold still, Granger. This should only take a few moments. When she nodded, he moved his wand quickly. Aperio! A hazy blue aura surrounded her, and Moody grunted. Just as I thought. A tracking charm has been placed on you. Normally, I'd simply remove it. This is too good an opportunity to pass up. He looked at the two young men. Weasley, Potter, watch carefully now. You too, Granger. I'm going to transfer the tracking charm to the table here in the library. Once he was sure they were watching him, he moved his wand slowly so they could see the motions, ending with a quick flick towards the table. Transstuli! The aura around Hermione snapped into place around the table, then faded away. That was brilliant! Ron exclaimed. Won't the charm just be replaced once Dumbledore knows it's gone? Hermione asked. Probably, Harry said before Moody could answer. But Matt just showed us how to take care of that problem. Very good, Potter, the ex-aura praised. Once you're back at Hogwarts, the three of you can scan yourselves or each other. If you find something, you can now either remove it or transfer it to something or someone else. Harry, Ron and Hermione exchanged looks, then burst out laughing. Moody's magical eyes spun wildly, and he flashed them a rather feral grin. You're next, Weasley, Moody said once the teens had recovered. He scanned the redhead quickly. As expected, the young man was also saddled with a tracking charm, which was transferred to a teacup on the table. Hermione had been following along with her own wand, and Moody grunted his approval before turning to Harry. You ready, Potter? Whenever you are, Harry said. This time, when Moody cast the spell, the aura that appeared around Harry was sharply defined, but muddy in color. What the hell is this? Mad Eye asked, his head tilted slightly as he examined the aura. It's ugly, is what it is, Ron muttered. This is more than a mere tracking charm. The old man muttered as he walked around Harry, flicking his wand. You've got the two I mentioned before. One to track your location and another to track your health. And what's this? It seems as though the Ministry and at least two other people have placed tracking charms on you as well. What? Harry growled. You heard me, Potter. Now don't interrupt. Hurrah! Seems your parents placed a monitoring charm on you and... What in Merlin's name? No, we'll come back to those later. Let's get these trackers off you first. Rather than transfer the spells to objects around the room, Moody destroyed them. When Hermione tried to protest, he glared her into silence. Dumbledore will know his charms are gone the moment he sees Potter again. The other two were simple tracking charms. The other to be actively seeking him to know the charms are gone, he explained. I also removed the monitoring charm, as there is no need for it now. Ron glared at Moody when Harry flinched. The removal process seems to have cleared up the aura, Hermione said, trying to sound cheerful. Moody grunted. There are still a few things left. One looks to be something from your mother, and it's muddying the waters somewhat. Can you remove it? Ron asked quietly. Not until I know what it is, Weasley. Hermione watched Harry with concern. Are you all right? She asked, as Moody continued his examination. Yeah, it's just... He shrugged, unsure how to explain. Mad Eye stepped away from Harry and looked him in the eye. Don't worry about it too much, Potter. You are the most important person in your parents' lives. Their actions were only ever for your benefit, to keep you happy and healthy. His eyes narrowed. That gives me an idea. Hold still now. Raising his wand, he muttered something under his breath and watched as the light surrounding Harry split into 3 distinct auras. Hermione's eyes widened. What's that sickly green-colored one? That's the connection between him and Voldemort, Moody said. From the scar? Harry asked. Moody nodded. Aye, and there's nothing I can do to break it, he said. I know. I don't like it, but I've learned to live with it, the young man told him quietly. You'll learn to take care of it yourself once I've finished with you. Moody snapped. What are the other 2, then? Ron asked. Moody cocked his head. Lily's is the blue one. From the looks of it, she bound his magic as a child. It's commonly found in youngsters who have more than their fair share of accidental magic. Usually it's done to protect the child from harming themselves. And the last, Harry asked curiously, the last reeks of Dumbledore. It's tied in with Lily's binding spell. It's old, put in place when he was still very young, Moody told him. Maybe he cast it when he took Harry to the Dursleys, Ron asked. That would make sense. Dumbledore knew my aunt and uncle hated magic, Harry said. Moody shrugged. It's possible. There's no way to tell its exact age. What I don't understand is why they weren't removed when you started Hogwarts. The trio exchanged looks, but said nothing. You might as well remove them, Harry said, turning to face Mad Eye once more. I've no need of them now. Removing them is simple enough, Moody agreed. But your magic has been bound for many years. I'm not sure how your magic will react once free. Harry drew a breath. Then I'll have to learn to control it again. What choice is there? Nodding, Moody lifted his wand and removed both binding spells. When the auras flickered out and nothing happened, he blew out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Well, that wasn't so bad. How do you feel, Potter? He asked. Harry's forehead wrinkled in thought. Fine, I think. My skin is tingling a bit, but Harry! Ron and Hermione both exclaimed. When they moved toward him, Moody held up his hand. Stay back! He snapped. Turning to Harry, he knelt down. Potter! Listen to me, Potter. Harry looked up at the old man, and his eyes glowed eerily. Moody? He asked. Yes, Potter. Now, listen. What you're feeling is the force of your power. It's been bound for so many years, and you haven't had the chance to adjust to it, as most kids would. It's no different than what you're used to controlling. There's just more of it. Do you understand? Yeah, but why does it hurt? He gasped. Once the bindings were removed, it rushed back in a flood. Moody told him, That was my mistake. I should have removed them one at a time, so you'd have a chance to adjust. It seems I'm becoming as foolish as Dumbledore in my old age, Harry muttered, the pains easing up a bit. Moody glanced at Hermione and Ron. Help him into a chair. We have a bit of time to spare, so let's give Potter a chance to recover as much as he can. Once they got Harry seated, Moody called for Dobby and asked him to retrieve a potion for the boy's headache. After he was dosed, Dobby popped away, and they gave Harry time to let the painkillers kick in. Moody yanked his flask out of his pocket and uncorked it. Taking a drink, he railed at himself for being so foolish. When Harry leaned back on his chair sometime later and sighed, all eyes turned to him. Are you feeling better, mate? Ron asked worriedly. Yeah, the pain's gone. I'm sorry, Potter. I was careless, Moody growled. That's all right, Mad Eye. As you once told me, we all make mistakes, Harry said with a lopsided grin. When Moody growled something about smart-ass kids, Harry laughed softly. If you're feeling up to it, we should leave, Mad Eye said. The trio looked at each other, stood, and put their packs on. Where are we going, anyway? Hermione asked you'll see soon enough, Moody told her, as he pulled a rusty tin can out of his pocket and waited. 2 small pops announced the arrival of the house elves. Harry spoke to them quietly for a few moments, then joined his friends, who stood near the Exoror. Grab hold, Moody said. Once they'd done so, he tapped the can with his wand. They were gone in a blink. A second later, Dobby disappeared. 2 hours later, they landed once again, looking haggard and windblown. The three teens staggered on impact, and Moody hissed as he caught his balance. "That was Paris, wasn't it?" Hermione moaned as she rubbed her forehead. "Yeah, and Beijing, New York, and New Delhi," Harry muttered, his eyes closed tightly as he fought his rolling stomach. "Ice!" Ron exclaimed, shuddering against the remembered chill of the Arctic. "Quit your belly aching!" Moody growled. "Portkeys can be traced. It was necessary to take an indirect route." "Indirect?" Ron exclaimed. "No! Took us on a bloody world tour!" When Hermione gasped, Harry and Ron looked at her, concerned. She was staring at something ahead of them. Turning to see what the problem was, Harry suddenly cursed and pulled out his wand. "Protego!" he snarled, and a shield snapped into place in front of him. He then trained his wand on Moody. A moment later, Dobby appeared and raised his own shield, protecting all three teens. "You will not harm Harry Potter or his friends," he said fiercely. Hermione drew her wand, but looked a bit confused. A large group of people were approaching slowly, many with their hands in plain sight, proving they were unarmed. Ron stared for a moment. "To be truthful, I don't care who they are," he muttered, "if they can make the world." "Stop spinning! I'd gladly fall to my knees in thanks." "You're already on your knees, Ron," Hermione hissed. "Get up!" "I am." He looked down in astonishment. "Well, hell, when did that happen?" "About 3 seconds after we arrived." "Now get up and draw your wand," Harry snapped. "Ah, right." The redhead climbed to his feet and drew his wand. "Now what?" Hermione shook her head, her expression tight with fear. "I've no idea. You're slow, Potter," Moody growled. "Yeah, well, I was a little busy trying to keep the contents of my stomach from seeing the light of day," Harry snarled. "Now, do you want to tell me what's going on, or should I just rip your throat out and be done with it?" Moody laughed. "You could try, Potter, but you wouldn't get the job done." Seeing the teen's face tighten, he shook his head in frustration. "Think, boy. I told you I wouldn't betray you. I promised to help you train, and I had to call in a lot of favors to set this up." "This is La Tortuga Island off the coast of Venezuela. 3 of the people walking towards us are your other tutors. The rest are Auroras and support staff from the Venezuelan ministry. The area is protected by a Fidelius charm, and I'm the secret keeper. It's also heavily warded, and now that we're here, more will be added so no one can portkey in. With Dobby's help, we can even keep other house elves out." "And why would the Venezuelan ministry be willing to help us?" Harry asked, his wand still pointed at Moody. "Because you're the bleeding boy who lived. I know you hate the title, but in this case, it opened a lot of doors. George Strauss is an unspeakable in the Venezuelan ministry, and he owed me a favor. When I asked him to tutor you in occlumency, he jumped at the chance. He spoke to his minister, and I was called in to explain the situation and the need for secrecy." "That doesn't explain why the minister would want to help," Harry growled. "For the honor of training and protecting the boy." "Who lived, you dolt?" "The minister made everyone involved in the project swear an oath of secrecy. He then swore the same oath to me, with the understanding that, once we're done here, he will be released from part of that oath to crow to the press." When Harry stiffened, Moody wanted to shake him. "The press?" Harry asked quietly. "The minister will be telling the press that you vacationed in Venezuela and were under the ministry's protection. He'd like to meet you before you leave, but he won't push that issue if you don't wish to speak to him. Every effort has been made to bring in the best people to teach you and keep you safe while you're here. There are Auroras guarding the perimeter of the camp, and the entire compound will soon be placed under the effects of a time-turner, and that's no easy task. But there just isn't enough time to do what needs to be done without it." Seeing the disbelief on the young man's face, Moody growled and took a step forward. "Don't you understand?" the old man asked. "Everyone here knows that you and your friends will be on the front line in this war. But unlike Dumbledore, we intend to ensure that you have the abilities and the courage to survive what's coming. Why didn't you tell us all this before we left?" Hermione asked. "If you don't know anything, you can't give anything away," Moody told her. "What? You think Harry would write to Dumbledore and Voldemort, telling them all about his upcoming fun-filled trip to Venezuela?" Ron exclaimed. Moody met Harry's eyes, then glanced up at his scarf for several long moments before meeting the boy's green-eyed gaze once more. He cocked his head to the side and raised an eyebrow in question. Harry nodded in understanding. The Dark Lord had access to his thoughts. He wouldn't voluntarily give anything away, but Voldemort could have found out through their link. He dropped his shield and lowered his wand, though he kept it in his hand. Dobby, seeing the shield go down, dropped his own, but watched the group of strangers warily. "What now?" Hermione asked, lowering her wand. "Introductions," Moody growled as he turned to face the three people coming toward them. The others had stopped some distance away. Harry's eyes narrowed. One of the three people needed no introduction. "Remus," he muttered. "Professor Lupin. What's he doing here?" Ron asked. "Moody said the three of them were our tutors, didn't he?" Hermione asked. "And he was our defense instructor in 3rd year." As Ron and Hermione continued to discuss the issue, Harry watched the three approach warily. Remus looked as he always did, though more tired. On his right was a tall, dignified-looking man with short black hair shot with grey and penetrating, dark-coloured eyes. To Remus's left was a striking woman of middle years. Her auburn hair was long and flowed freely down her back. She would have been beautiful but for her overly large ears and sharp, almost beak-like nose. Her blue eyes, however, were calm as she examined the teens. "Listen up," Moody barked, causing Hermione and Ron to fall silent. "You all know Lupin. To his right is George Strauss, an unspeakable with the Venezuelan ministry." The man bowed slightly. "He'll be your tutor in occlumency and apparition, and be helping me teach you warding." To Remus left is Miss Angelique Belmont. The woman nodded politely. "She's a professor at Beauxbatons and will be teaching you charms. Remus will work with you on defense. As well as warding, I'll be teaching you how to fight." He turned to face the three teens fully. "I know you all have questions, but I'm going to ask you to hold off on them for the time being. I need you three to understand that this isn't a vacation, nor is it Hogwarts. We don't have a lot of time, so you're going to be worked hard. The four of us will help you in any way that we can, but we will not coddle you." He paused long enough to meet the eyes of each teen. "You'll be sore, tired, and cursing all of us at one point or another, and that's fine. What I need to know before we start is that you'll see this through. Everyone on this island has given up a lot to either teach or protect you while you're here. We all need to know that you'll not give up when things become difficult or tiring." The three teens exchanged looks, then Harry stepped forward. "I need this," he said quietly. "If I'm to survive Voldemort and his followers, I need whatever training the four of you can give me." He took a deep breath, then continued firmly. "But you also need to understand something. I've reached the end of my rope. In one way or another, I've been dancing to the tune others have set for me my whole life, and I won't do it any more." Hermione opened her mouth, but Ron placed a hand on her shoulder and shook his head. "Let him have his say," the redhead told her quietly. "They need to understand where he's coming from before they can teach him properly." Hermione looked at him, a bit shocked by his insight, but nodded in compliance. "Others have dictated what I can, will, can't, or must do since the death of my parents. The excuse has always been that I'm a child, and therefore can't understand what's happening around me, and that the adults in my life know what's best for me. What they don't realize, however, is that my childhood—" "No, our childhood," he said, waving a hand toward his friends, "ended during our first year at Hogwarts." He looked at the four tutors before him and sighed. "I'll give you my pledge that I won't give up on the training you're offering. In return, however, I expect all four of you to be honest with us in all things. We're not children any longer, so don't treat us as though we are, or think you know better than us how we should live our lives. Give us that pledge, and we'll work hard and learn whatever you can teach us." The four adults exchanged glances. "I have to go with Harry on this one," Ron stated suddenly. "Most of the trouble we've gotten into over the years is due to the so-called adults in our lives keeping the truth from us, then throwing us to the wolves." "I don't know that I'd have put it that way," Hermione said, frowning at Ron, but both he and Harry are correct. George Strauss stepped forward. "Honest and direct. I like that," he said with a slight Spanish accent. "I think we shall all get along just fine. I give you all my pledge that it will always be so, as far as your training and your safety are concerned." When Hermione's eyes narrowed, Moody shook his head. "Think, girl, He works for the Venezuelan ministry and is privy to state secrets. There are some things that he may not be able to tell you if you ask the wrong questions." "Oh," she said, looking a bit embarrassed. "I hadn't thought of that. Sorry." Angelique Belmont stepped forward next. "Unlike my friend, I'm not privy to state secrets," she said with a smile. Her French accent was not heavy, and she was much easier to understand than Fleur Delacour had been. "I will be honest and open in all our dealings, not just training. I will answer all of your questions if I can. If I cannot, I will help you find the answers you seek." Remus moved forward stiffly and stared at Harry. "I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong man, and I hurt you. I'm so sorry, Harry. I'm sorry for not believing you. I'm sorry it took you tossing me over the rail at headquarters for me to finally see the truth." George and Angelique looked at him quizzically, but he ignored them. "I'm hoping you'll come to trust me again, but that has to be your decision. I won't push it. What I will do is pledge to always be honest with you from now on. I'll teach you everything I can while we're here and support you in any way possible once we return. If that means going up against Dumbledore, so be it. From this point on, you will always be my first priority, Harry, as you should have been from the start." "You can't ask for more than that, mate," Ron said quietly. Harry nodded. "I can't promise you anything, Remus, except that I'll try." Remus relaxed slightly. "Thank you," he said simply. After the three teens each gave their pledge to complete the training offered, Moody stepped forward. "Let's get you three settled, then we'll begin." There isn't a ship. I'm very sorry for all you folks out there who thought I quit here. If you believe that strongly about it, fire up your word process and get busy. Oh, and make sure to share the Earl to your story. We're all looking for good fiction to read. Second, I can't believe I have to say this again. I can only assume some of you must be new to our work. Now, read very carefully. This is not canon. Let me repeat. This is not canon. That means that Horcruxes, Deathly Hollows, except the cloak, as that came in first year, and the whole stupid idea of love killing Voldemort, a group hug to kill the Dark Lord. Yipey! Third, some folks can't read or comprehend, it would seem. So let me clarify a few points for you. I never said you couldn't ask questions in your reviews. B. I never said anything about leaving out encouragement to publish more of the story. This is what I said. A bit of information for all of you. Write more. Reviewers, I'm not going to write any more of this story for one simple reason. It's already complete. And for your next question, there are 9 chapters total. See the difference, see? There would be no point in querying me on the ship, as I've already stated that there isn't one. You'd simply be wasting your time. But hell, it's your time. Query away. As for bashing the ship, what ship is there to bash? See, the thing is, you don't have to review. I don't hold chapters hostage until I get X number of reviews. This story is done, and 1 chapter will be posted each day. Maybe more if I have time. That means you can read and not feel obligated to say one little word. Enjoy the story, or go find something else to read if it doesn't entertain you. If that means I don't get many reviews, I won't be upset by it. Does that make me foolish? Well, I suppose it would if I wrote because I wanted to get as many reviews as possible. Good thing I don't write for that reason, isn't it? However, as soon as the power company and my ISP start taking the reviews for my story as payment for their services, I'll start holding chapters hostage and encouraging people to bash non-existent ships. Does that make you feel better? Excellent. If any of the above offends you, you know where the exit is. I'm sorry, but I'm not here to coddle you or cater to your wishes. If you want me to craft a story specifically to your taste, you're out of luck. I write to entertain myself first, my husband second. If some of you can find enjoyment in it as well, that's a bonus, but not the goal of my writing. But you knew that was coming, right? If there's someone out there who wants a unique, original, non-Harry Potter story crafted just for them, Bob and I are willing to discuss fees. And no, we don't work for donuts or peanuts or any other edibles. I am, however, willing to discuss toys. I hope everyone enjoyed the chapter. The next should be up tomorrow.